with Richard Massa. Our hosts and their guests are here to talk about comics, movies, random topics, and everything in between. Now, here's your hosts, Ryan and Richard.
The Oppenheimer Projects.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's 8 o'clock on January 31st. And Richard, we're big meme guys. I think the big meme today is January was a long year, but we made it.
Yeah. There's also which one of these doesn't belong meme today. So
yeah. I was gonna say I'm here tonight and I don't have my beard, but we have Jordan.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. And Jordan does belong. So
Jordan does belong.
So we're glad that everyone can tune into our hour-long podcast all about facial hair. So
yes.
Yes. So we're here this evening, and one of the reasons I wanted to have Jordan back was because he's a super nice guy, but also at some point I'm going to kind of give my thoughts, and maybe you guys will as well. And I think probably if I know you two well enough, you will as well. Dave Chappelle, Netflix, Spotify, and Joe Rogan. I see some similarities here with how things are playing out at the moment. But first, I think, Richard, did you have something about January 31st?
Oh, January 31st. January 31st is birthday day here in my area. So today is, and so I teased in the thing, two siblings born on the same day are called twins. Ryan, you have a set of those?
You have a pair, yeah.
And then you hear all the time about Irish twins, two siblings born within like a year or so of each other. My mom and my aunt both celebrate their birthday today, January 31st, but they were born 3 years apart. So mom is 73 and my aunt just turned 70. So I don't know if they've ever made a name for that, where like two siblings born on the same day, but like several years apart.
Yeah, I've never heard it. I know that like my boys are not identical.
Okay.
I don't think they're fraternal. I think they're die, but I think fraternal and die could be the same thing. But again, I haven't heard anything for same day, years apart children.
Yeah, I mean, if my mom was on right now, she would say, we were poor Italians. So my mom had to, your grandmother gave birth to your aunt because we couldn't have too many birthday celebrations. But also, my favorite baseball player growing up was Nolan Ryan. It's his birthday. He turned 75 today. Mario Alonso, who my brother Mario is named after, would have turned 101 today. And then it's just fun names like Jackie Robinson, his birthday today. Justin Timberlake, not quite on the same level of iconic. No. But again, JT is a pretty big Mini Driver. So a couple cool names. But for me, Nolan Ryan was a huge part of growing up. Jackie Robinson is Jackie Robinson. And Mario Alonso, I don't think a lot of people know, but a famous opera singer who my brother's named after. So a neat little January 31st positive story to share before we, Ryan and I, start arguing. Maybe arguing. By the way, at no point when we argue do I want you to feel neutered by anything that happens, okay? I don't want you in any way. Yeah.
We'll jump in.
You don't want me to feel less masculine.
Yeah, I don't want you to feel less masculine. I want to feel like you're less of a man, or you can't. You know what's the way? I don't want to make you feel like you can't create life. How about that? Okay. So.
No. Okay.
I was Jordan. I was talking about Ryan getting fixed this weekend.
Oh, I know. This has been a running joke.
Yes.
It's been a running joke. Richard, I told Jordan before you got in here that my boss and I are good friends. We have good conversations, which takes the pain away from the daily grind, if you will.
Right.
But so today, no pun intended. He took his car to the shop at 7 a.m. to get an oil change. It didn't happen. He was waiting there for 3 hours. Finally, when he made it in, he comes into my office. I go, "How's your car?" He goes, "Good. How are your balls?"
Yeah.
So him and I are both kind of in the process of getting our items fixed.
Good.
But I don't foresee too much arguing, if any. We're pretty good at talking things through. Even Jordan and I, because Jordan, we've been through a lot since 2010. A lot has happened. Osama bin Laden died.
Yeah,
we saw we saw hobos get into fights at our school in the middle of the night. So lots of stuff. But
Yeah.
Joe Rogan and Spotify. I don't know if we need to go over what Joe said. Perhaps we do. Perhaps people.
Yeah, a little bit. I was thinking just a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah, a little bit. So from what I gather, and this is why I have you two to help me fill the gaps. From what I gather, I believe there are, should we say, a few groups, a few people who believe that Joe Rogan is committing to giving out false and incorrect information in regards to the vaccine. And what I mean about committing, and I was talking to Monica about this while we're talking about it, is, saying that X, Y, and Z will take place in a negative manner if you get vaccinated. And I was talking to Monica, and from what I have gathered from listening to Joe Rogan over the last 2 years, I do love Joe Rogan from being a UFC announcer, from his podcast. He is very open-minded, but he also will speak like something he discovered or learned is the be-all, end-all without any solid credentials to back him up. And I'm not saying that I'm throwing him under the bus. I'm just saying that he, as we know, we see, he speaks to a lot of intelligent people, a lot of very experienced, knowledgeable people, and he creates in his mind what he believes, and he's sticking to it, if that makes sense. Am I making sense? It was kind of a run on.
Yeah, to me, I think that was a really accurate description of what of what actually gets him in trouble, or when he makes the news, is because he'll commit to something, and he's got that a passionate kind of like, yeah, if you take subways, you're underground,
totally.
Yeah, like people who take subways, they're underground. Like, and I do apologize for my voice. I was on a subway last week. And honestly, this is where, ever since I got back from New York, my voice has been shot. But yeah, that's the thing he does, where it's like, hey, but sometimes, even though they're called subways, like in Boston, they're above ground, and and they're, like he just, he kind of commits on to that. But what I have seen him do, and I thought, and I know we'll touch on this later, what I thought his video today did was say, like, that's the entertainer in me. And I think that's kind of what gets to a lot of people's issue with him, is like, well, is it dangerous for you to just be the entertainer with such a important topic?
No,
right.
And I was going to jump in here, but I mean, I agree.
Yeah.
It's one of those things, like, you go to his podcast to be entertained. He meets with a bunch of different celebrities and comedians. You want to see what that person's going to say. But then when he says like these, non-scientific claim, like, whoa, what's going on here? And I feel like that's the thing. It's like same thing like journalism. Like, you have to kind of accept responsibility for the things you can't just say, oh, I'm an entertainer, but like, no, there's more to what you're putting out there, and millions of people are listening to you. So, lo and behold, someone's going to take that as as gospel and go with it. I mean, they were making fun of him from being a horse dewormer for a while because he was one of the biggest people out there. But I mean, again, you have to and again, his post today, we're talking about he wanted to have experts on to be able to use. It's great, but you kind of have to have going in like, okay, he's just an entertainer. He doesn't have a medical background or a scientific background, and that's the problem.
Yeah, and I was talking to Grayson last night at like 2 a.m. because that's what we do. Grayson, if you're listening, you can still join us here at the podcast, buddy. And him and I did have I don't want to say a debate, but it also wasn't a light conversation either, if that makes sense. And one thing that I always say in regards to making up my own mind is I quote Kevin Spacey in The Negotiator, where Samuel L. Jackson says, "Don't believe everything you read," and he goes on to say, well, I don't just believe everything I read. I like to read and watch a lot of things and then make up my own opinion, right? So for me, that whole line was twofold, which is one, Joe Rogan, as we just said, tends to make up his own opinion and then kind of just say it like it's fact. And then I was saying to Grayson, but at the end of the day, I'm not letting what Joe Rogan and his guests say influence which decision I'm ultimately going to make. And then Grayson said, like you just said, Jordan, like, take it as God and run with it like gospel or whatever the saying was that there are a lot of people who, for whatever reason, will take what Joe Rogan and the guests on his show say and run with it like fact.
Yeah, I mean, that's the problem. I mean,
Yeah. So let me ask you two, kind of just bouncing off what I just said. I don't think that either of you would take what Joe Rogan says as fact and run with it, but there is people who would, and that's the problem, and that's because me, I'm walking, and this is what Grayson was trying to say. Maybe I didn't say it clearly 2 minutes ago. Was that I'm just like, yeah, but it's no big deal. And Grayson's like, but it is a big deal because there's thousands of people who are like, yo, I heard it on Joe Rogan's podcast. I heard it on Joe Rogan's podcast, and that's what they're saying, right? I heard it on Joe Rogan's podcast. This is what he said. Done. I'm not getting vaccinated. I'm not lifting with heavy dumbbells, whatever. Because like we said, Joe goes on a lot of spurts. But Grayson was saying, dude, you're the 1 in 1,000, let's say 1,000, not a million. That's like, Joe's just being Joe. But there's people that are like, fuck that. Like this, like Joe's saying it, so it's true.
Yeah, it really, we talk about hero worship on here all the time and celebrities and how we treat our celebrities. And all day, the example I've been thinking of is I listen to Howard Stern 24/7 growing up and most of, and a couple years ago, and then he went to Sirius, and I listened for a few years. And then as I've matured as a person, I struggle to listen to Howard. Now, Howard is a totally different act today than he was 30 years ago, 20 years ago. Again, he's a kind of like an entertainer like Joe Rogan in that, he had on Hillary Clinton, and of course had to ask Hillary Clinton about her sex life, and but that was his shtick. That was his thing. But he was also good at this is what I've heard about Joe. I haven't listened to too much of him. Like he has really good engaging conversations with, like his guests, and he's a very regular guy, and I am sure there is we go use our time machine. 20-year-old Richard, 18-year-old Richard was walking around probably going, oh no, I listened to Howard this morning and Howard said this. And oh yeah, no, I don't trust this person, And again, like not about anything to quite this level, but if he was giving his opinion on the New York mayor, I was like, yeah, that New York mayor's a piece of crap because Howard said so.
Yeah.
And that's, it's that kind of like, that disembodied voice. And I, or, now they're all podcasts. It's not the person on the radio, but it's that kind of like, yeah, like you just kind of believe everything you hear. And I think it's become, Joe's issue now has become this way because, and again, how many people throughout Howard Stern's entire run did exactly this? Like, yeah, I don't want you to play my music on any of his stations. I don't want to be affiliated with him, and I actually stopped listening to him about a year and a half ago or 2 years ago because he runs an entire separate station with his old stuff. And it's like, oh yeah, no, this is, even though, he would swear it's not, it's too sexist. It's too racist. It's too, like it can send the wrong message to the wrong person, kind of repeating what we're saying, like, and so I kind of struggle with that. Like I can't be sitting on my high horse and then also be like, oh, I was listening to the old 80s version of Howard and he was talking about, he would do a black voice all the time, and he was speaking of Ebonics, like he would do and again, 17-year-old Richard probably laughed at that or did laugh at that. I don't want to say probably, but 49-year-old Richard's like, yeah, no, that's, again, even though I know he's doing it as a character, even though I know he isn't really racist, It's the person who interprets that way. And now we look at what Joe's saying. And again, I've definitely seen plenty of clips where Joe's like, I think the one clip I watched was where they're talking about help me with the word, like
I just watched it. Yeah.
myocarditis, right? And then
Yeah.
the other doctor's like, no, Google it. The kids who get COVID have like 8 times as many issues of myocarditis, and again, but Joe at the beginning of that was like, no, you're wrong. It's this
Yeah,
way.
I just saw it. Yeah.
Right? Yeah. He's like, no, and again, I think that's the entertainer in him. And this thing, if the three of us right now had a debate about which actor was the best Batman, we can get as loud as we want. And I think that's what is making people nervous, is like when this is life or death stuff, and so yeah, Jordan. Right.
Yeah. And Joe has I don't want to just say he has any. Joe Rogan's following is diverse, right? It's the mixed martial artist. It's the former special forces operator. It's literally the Jocko Willing. It's Tim Kennedy, Dan Aykroyd. Like, people love Joe Rogan, right? Like normal people like us, if you will, because we're not not famous yet. Plenty of successful and people love him as well. And like I said, Jocko Willing. You guys know I ride Jocko's jock. That's me over here. I love Jocko Willing. He's had some great conversations with Joe Rogan, as has Tim Kennedy. So I'm going to kind of go not off the topic of what we're talking about, COVID, but just kind of something I was thinking about today. Like I said, Jocko Willing, Tim Kennedy, these are guys who have lived through war, have led men and women through battle, very successful, very smart, intelligent people. I've heard Joe Rogan talk with Dan Aykroyd about Area 51 and UFOs, right? I'm not saying they're wrong, right? But that goes back to what we're talking about, is that I'm taking it all with a grain of salt. Are they wrong? I don't know. I haven't done my own research. I'm not going to do my own research after listening to the podcast. But I'm not going back to the whole COVID thing, right? There's Dan Aykroyd and Joe Rogan talking about UFOs, and then there's Joe Rogan sitting down with all these accomplished doctors talking about COVID. And on both topics, I'm kind of just like, meh, you know what I mean? I'm like, I've heard Joe Rogan talk about UFOs. I've heard him talk about COVID. I'm just here to tune in, right? So I guess what I'm saying is that, what are your thoughts, or what I'm trying to ask is, what are your thoughts on the Neil Young and people having their music pulled from Spotify, right? This is kind of something else where I'm like, listen, to me, it's not that serious, but to other people, it is, and they're passionate about it, and they're like, screw you. Apple Music will play my music. Your mom and dad might have my record or CD or whatever the case may be. They don't really need Spotify, but again, they're passionate about it. They would like to see more people get vaccinated. These are the moves they're making. And then me, at the end of the day, I'm like, dude, Joe Rogan talks with Dan Aykroyd about UFOs. It's not that big of a deal. Thoughts?
Go ahead, Jordan.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh yeah, I saw that.
What do you want on Facebook? Yeah. Comment. With an H.
They're not listening to the Neil Young channel, Jordan. I was thinking the same thing about like if Alexis thought like Drake or something. But go as you were. I'm sorry.
No, but I think that's safe to say. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, too. So somebody just commented that I don't know if they did it in the right spot. They can't hear Ryan. They can't hear Ryan's. I mean, sorry, they can't hear Jordan on the Facebook. So I don't know if that's just random or. So if anyone else is listening and you can't hear Jordan or you can't
Right
hear
in
Jordan,
the chat, guys. Right
into the chat
because I can hear him.
Yeah, I can hear him too. He's saying a lot of good things, so we don't want you to miss it.
Yeah, no.
I should pretend if no one else can hear Jordan, I should pretend like I disagree with what you're saying, Jordan. So what I was thinking when Ryan asked the question, and then after listening to Jordan, is that very simply this is an action that Neil Young and a handful of others who've done this, like that's an action they could do. That was a simple, like this was the way they could get the. I think that's the thing. I think you're absolutely right that the vast majority of Neil Young, not that he doesn't have listeners younger, younger, but like yeah, like right, absolutely. Like if my parents were big Neil Young fans, like they're listening to it on CDs. They're listening to it, through, telling their Alexa to play the music. But yeah, if Amazon, if they ban music from Amazon, then I think older people might be more upset. But it got the press. It got the press out there. It got people's attention, which is often what Neil Young is a classic protest guy. So again, that's what I think it really accomplished was just kind of getting that out there. And then Spotify. This please weigh in after I finish this. Spotify has said now we're going to put a disclaimer in front of the episode saying this may contain information about COVID that is not necessarily fact. I find that I find that a little pointless, because the person who is smart enough, and I apologize for using those words, but the person who's smart enough doesn't need the help of the disclaimer. And the person who is believing everything coming out of Joe Rogan's and his guests isn't going to care about that because that disclaimer now just becomes part of propaganda, part of the deep state, conspiracy. Like they're trying to silence us, So again, it's that idea, like you're not going to change anyone's mind, So I find the whole thing interesting, and you know, it constantly comes up here, and when we talk about, you know, Netflix and Dave Chappelle a little later, or in the same conversation now, yeah, because cancel culture doesn't exist. Like it's a great buzzword, and it's going to get clicks every time we put it up there. Um, it's just, I keep saying consequence culture. It's consequence culture, and the consequence is pretty simple. Like Neil Young Neil Young fans were probably not listening to, again, not making a huge generalization, but making a huge generalization. They probably were not intersecting too much, and that's the kind of thing. It's like, what are we accomplishing? And what we're accomplishing is we express ourselves. And I apologize if I used this the last time Jordan was on here, because when we were talking about Dave Chappelle, but like R. Kelly, Bing Crosby, and Bill Cosby, like, all these different people who, quote unquote, like, should have consequences for their action, and, like, yeah, if someone, wants to listen to R. Kelly, they will. If someone's flipping around and sees an old episode of the Cosby Show, they can watch it, or they can't watch it. Like, that's the idea. Like, it's not about, we all have that freedom to choose or not choose. And it's just weird how sometimes we interpret this as like, oh, like, if Neil Young's not going to be on Spotify, I'm not going to listen to Joe Rogan anymore. Like, no, you can do whatever you want. Like, no one's, I'm saying no one is taking, but I guess that's the fear here, right? Is that people are worried that somehow Spotify would have reacted and taken them off the air. That's the fear. So. Right. Right. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Yeah. I think I got lost in my own thoughts there, but yeah, that's a good that's a good point. Yeah, sometimes when we're trying to get across the bridge, we take our little detours. But again, I think, without trying to, I fail sometimes at my examples. Right, the idea being that, yeah, we don't. Yeah, that's the thing. And honestly, as you were talking, I was thinking, and even if Spotify was like, hey, we don't like what Joe has to say, and we find it dangerous, he's on some other platform in minutes, and his, yeah, right. Even if he's doing this, even if he's stealing Ryan's idea for doing Facebook Live videos, like, yeah, he's on, and then, that's the idea. Like, again, sorry for all the press, Howard Stern, but Howard Stern, like, he, listen, I sound exactly like these Joe Rogan fans that I might make fun of, but like, Howard Stern made satellite radio. I don't know if satellite radio gets, but again, like, there was 100,000 subscribers, and then he joins, and there's 2 million plus, like, there's millions of subscribers over the year. And then it just became a regular part of everything. So yeah, I think if Joe Rogan wanted to, he could go wherever, and his fans would follow.
Yeah, I was actually wondering today, and we always, and Richard just, he says it, we say it here on the podcast, cancel culture is not real. They're not signing in anywhere. They're not having group meetings, maybe like petitions on change.org and the internet, because I did get a Spotify Joe Rogan email today from We Move On. I must have signed something years ago. So anyway, I think that people may be starting to realize that the comment sections and the likes, and as intimidating as those numbers may be, cancel culture doesn't have a leg to stand on if you just don't bend. Because at the end of the day, Joe Rogan has Dana White behind him, and Dana White, in my opinion, is one of the most powerful men in the world. He has a golden UAE visa to Abu Dhabi, and they also gave him a Ferrari as like a gift because he brought so much business and press over there by creating Fight Island. And I would confidently say that anybody who's had a conversation with Joe Rogan, whether they agreed on the points or the topics, I would bet that they have some sort of respect for him, namely like The Rock, right? I didn't even know that The Rock and Joe Rogan were friends, but The Rock is a very powerful influencer, actor, celebrity, and he's like, hey, I'm going to come to Joe Rogan's aid. So at the end of the day, nobody's taking Joe Rogan out, right? You can sign as many petitions as you want, and Dana White will be like, okay, well, you're not going to air a fight unless you let a 30-minute Joe Rogan special air before or after, right? Something like that. Like Dana White, and even Joe Rogan has his own connections. He doesn't really need Dana White. And then that's going to kind of take me to the Dave Chappelle Netflix thing, right? Because when we last spoke, Jordan, you, me, Richard, and Jordan yourself, Dave Chappelle was in the hot water, and that hot water turned cold real quick. Netflix was like, oh, you don't like it? Okay, well, he's going to headline our tour or special. Netflix is a joke, and we're also going to give him another comedy special, right? And nobody's canceling their Netflix subscription. I don't care what you say. I don't really care what if you're on the left or the right. You're watching, what is it? What's the chess show? The Queen's Gambit.
Yep.
They have Michael Bay on their payroll. They have Ryan Reynolds, they have Dwayne Johnson, they have all these celebrities, Sandra Bullock, right? They just keep pumping out hit after hit after hit, and you're not going to cancel your Netflix subscription just because they're letting Dave Chappelle have a special. You can get the petition going, you can type it on the internet, and Netflix was just like, no, I don't really care, right? And that's where I was kind of comparing the two, because I mean, in my opinion, Spotify didn't even blink. Yes, we've made the point that Neil Young appeals to a different demographic, but I think that Spotify and Netflix are kind of just like, I'm over the movements, I'm over the petitions, I'm over the comments. We personally, we get where people are coming from, but we're not canceling Joe Rogan or Dave Chappelle because you asked us to. What do you think?
Well, and I'm going to just steal Jordan because Jordan really helped me with a little bit of how to explain it. I'm curious, like how much, like both Netflix and Spotify, especially Spotify with this, like, I don't know if they were like, who cares? I mean, because Spotify's press release I thought was really solid about this, but with both Dave Chappelle and Joe Rogan, as Jordan kind of pointed out, like, yeah, they didn't R. Kelly. They didn't, like they didn't Tiger King and all, like, again, the Tiger King is someone who we should not give any respect to because he did some pretty, horrible things out there. And again, so I decided, and I don't know if I'm making this up or I stole from someone else. I keep saying consequence culture. I think really what it becomes, Ryan, is like more like just awareness culture. Like,
yeah,
all right, I've now been made aware of this situation. It does not affect me, one way or the other. But yeah, I'm gonna pass on. But I wasn't listening to Joe Rogan in the first place.
Right.
An example that works for me on a daily basis as a middle school librarian is J.K. Rowling and Harry Potter, and I've got a ton of people who I respect, other librarians who say, hey, J.K.'s feelings on her, her transphobic statements are dangerous. And so, yeah, I'm not going to pull that book from my library. That's a great book to suggest to kids to read, but I'm also not going to talk up J.K. Rowling. Like, I'm not going to be like, oh my goodness, she is amazing. She's such a wonderful person. Again, but also, I can't remember the last time as a librarian I ever really like hype up the author anyway, except for Jason Reynolds. I will hype up Jason Reynolds any chance I get. But, that kind of thing is like, it just brings awareness. And so, and then again, I'm sure there are a couple people who are like, oh, because again, I thought, I mean, I'm old, so Joe Rogan was on news radio for me in the '90s as a, as an actor, and then,
Yeah.
and then Fear Factor guy. Um, but, but again, like I would listen to him. I think he can be funny. And so that idea of like, yeah, you know what, I'm probably going to pass because I don't love what he's doing, or yeah, for me, when I heard things, and again, like I listened to, I got Jordan's opinion about it and stuff, and Jordan's opinion was like, hey, yeah, I didn't hate the Dave Chappelle, but like it made me want to pass, and so it just kind of creates that awareness, and so that's the thing. Like when I mentioned birthdays, like Nolan Ryan is such a great example. Like 75 years old, since the time I was 7 years old. I followed him. I have newspaper clippings. I literally have entire tubs of like newspaper clippings, baseball, like everything, how much I idolize this man, and Shanna today was like, hey, what's he up to? And I went, I don't know. And I don't want to find out because I don't want to, he's a good old Texas boy, like I don't want to find out like his opinions. I don't want to hear him say, but at the same time, if someone did point it out to me, it was like, oh, Nolan Ryan is an anti-vaxxer. Nolan Ryan thinks that, you're a loser if you got the shot. Yeah. Like, I'm not going to throw away my Nolan Ryan stuff, but, like, yeah, that's going to hit me. I used to think Aaron Rodgers was, I was going to say the cat's pajamas. I used to think Aaron, I definitely show my age in these podcasts. I definitely think Aaron, but I did. I used to think Aaron Rodgers had piercing blue eyes. He was charming in all those Allstate commercials, and again, my opinion.
Hey, it was State Farm, was it? Discount
State Farm. Oh, sorry.
Yeah,
sorry.
Discount double check. Yeah.
I wasn't trying to give credit to yeah. But again, like, but he said some things in the last few months that I didn't love, like I didn't.
He transformed a little bit, and it was like apparent. It didn't just end with like a statement or a post. He just like ran with it. Like you can see it on his face. You know what I mean? It was kind of scary. Does that make sense?
And I had to make a weird statement. Yeah, I had to make a weird statement earlier in like a couple months ago of and I don't know how much you're up to date on this, Ryan, but like Kyrie Irving, who is a flat earther and is pretty sure the earth is flat, even though he's an NBA player who's flown all around the world. But Kyrie, like he stood on his own principles and said, I won't get the shot. And that means I can't play in Brooklyn because I'm not allowed to be in the building when I'm not vaccinated. He stood on his principles and he owned it, which I felt was better than whatever Aaron was doing with, I didn't say I had, like all his little like half truths and his wordings and things, it's like, oh my goodness, I'm standing. I think Kyrie Irving is more genuine than Aaron Rodgers. And that's the key. Like I've chosen not to care about Aaron Rodgers anymore. Again, he's not going to make any less $1 million tomorrow because of that. Like, he didn't, maybe he choked in the final game because he knew I wasn't supporting him, but yeah, but again, I have that awareness and I'm able to like form my own opinion about these people and do with it what I want. So yeah, again, this is why we always will have this like, yeah, like cancel. What is cancel culture? Like I heard the host of the Ryan Mercer project, the Oppenheimer project, like he quoted Kevin Spacey. Like Kevin Spacey's like a known abuser, but he quoted him and again, like, but that's the thing. You would then have that choice of going, F that. I love that quote. I'm standing by it. Or you would go, I'll find, or you know what? I'll find a different way to say it. Like, and that's kind of what winds up happening is some of these people make the choice to fix what they do. And last thing before I stop rambling, I liked Joe Rogan's little video he put out today.
Yeah, 100%.
Like I thought, again, he is a professional actor. He's a professional, but I thought it was really like, honestly, everyone who has problems with PR should take a page out of his book because he was just like, hey, here's the deal. I'm not trying to, I'm not a doctor. I'm just trying to, so I found that
my host list is diverse, which I kind of forgot. I thought he made some very good, what's his name from CNN? Dr. Gupta.
Right? Yeah, yeah. Right.
And I actually forgot about that one, and that was actually a pretty popular one from what I hear. So he does keep it diverse. But yeah, before we cut Jordan off again, Jordan, as you were, I'm
Yep,
sorry.
sorry. Yeah.
I was thinking about that. Like, they're kind of just like throwing a temper tantrum, right? And I feel like if 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 we wanted to be immature, right? I'm kind of writing a comedy skit in my head. If there was somebody who was just, you see the character on their phone and they're like, you need to cancel Joe Rogan. He's putting, or no, you need to cancel Dave Chappelle Netflix. They're going on and on about Dave Chappelle and Netflix. I'd be like, I bet you if I checked your search right now, you watched the latest Sandra Bullock movie, didn't you? Didn't you? Didn't you? Right? And that's kind of like, I think that's what drives people nuts about cancel culture. Isn't so much the mission, but it's just like the relentless pace. It's just like, oh my goodness. But like you said, in a week, 2 weeks, somebody will find a tweet that the what was it, Simu Lee from what was it?
Shang-Chi.
Shang-Chi, right? He wrote a tweet 10 years ago and it popped up like the day the trailer dropped. Like, that's the kind of stuff that drives me nuts, but it goes back to the whole, should we call it the Richard and Howard Stern theory? This happened to James Gunn with Guardians of the Galaxy.
His career was over for a
Yes,
split minute.
literally over, fired. Disney fired him. And I remember having this discussion with one of my bartenders because it had happened. The tweet was like 10 years old. We were at the bar and he was kind of like, yeah, dude, but Disney has to address that. And I was like, all right, well, what were you doing 10 years ago? What were you up to? What was your mindset? What were you doing? And he paused and he was like, I was being a dumbass. And I was like, right. Like, everybody progresses, hopefully, in some way, shape, or form, whether it be positive or negative. People change in the course of 5 years, 10 years.
Yeah,
So
yeah, and then in the 2 long weeks till the Super Bowl, like it's I find this uh, fascinating. Like every player on the both football teams have this huge level of a certain level of fame right now, but somebody's going to find something that those players said, like which like, but because that's going to give them the clickbait because this is when the world is watching over the next 2 weeks. Like they didn't do the story 3 months ago, but yeah, we're going to find something that one of these players said. It was like, oh, this one player, yeah, like he told his girlfriend to get lost or she was fat, like, and it becomes a story where um which I again like, and again it's like to me it's interesting, and to play off a lot of things you're saying, Ryan, like I it's funny, like I don't hate it, and again, like I don't hate it, and I hope that I can be strong enough that when or if like consequence and cancel culture comes to the things that I like, that I can say, okay, like, because I do want it to create awareness. I do want, these things. And if you go, and that's what, this happened with James Gunn, like he could have, just let it overtake, but he made the right statements. When Kevin Hart got fired from being the host of the Oscars, which I'm going to say is 3 or 4 years ago, but it could be like longer than that. But when he got fired, he didn't come out and go, F all you all, don't try to cancel me. He said, I see how you can interpret that. Like he made statements like, and again, I guess that's what I'm looking for is kind of like what Joe Rogan said today. Like, I like when you get called on something, you kind of, instead of saying, oh, leave me the F alone, go bother someone else, or, oh, you ain't going to, like, yeah, you are not going to ruin Joe Rogan's life, and again, like Jordan nailed it earlier. The people whose lives really wind up getting ruined are Louis C.K. Like, oh, Louis C.K., they couldn't give him enough money on FX. Then it came out that he used to force women to stay in a room while he masturbated. Hey, guess what? I'm not losing any sleep over. I loved the Louis C.K. show on FX. Loved it, and loved his stand-up. But like, yeah, I'm okay. Like, I'm okay, with this, with that. And where, like John Mulaney, I think is one that kind of errs on, like, there are people who are so angry at John Mulaney because he left his wife and is with, Olivia Munn, like, and again, but that's different. Like, that's more just like, all right, they didn't agree with his decision, again, I know we're straying a little bit, from the Joe Rogan thing, which is, and again, just to give credit so I don't accuse of plagiarism, like what Jordan said earlier, like the information that he's allowing to get out there is potentially dangerous. It's that kind of thing where it's like, it's a little more serious, than just, spouting that don't go to see the new Spider-Man movie. It's not quite that. It's, it's a little more dangerous, but again, like, I don't like, I still, and I think we've said this before, I still really haven't had a conversation with anyone who is anti-COVID vaccine and really, like, I just haven't had that opportunity where I should say, I haven't had that conversation where, like, I hear people who talk about it who are just like, I don't need the government telling me what to do. And that, same with like masks and stuff. And like, that's a conversation I guess I can't relate to. And I don't know if I'm wrong for that, but like, am I like, am I the sheep, but like, but yeah, well, like, if you say to me, hey, like if Jordan was to say right now, hey, my wife didn't get vaccinated because she has an issue with the medicine and the doctors recommended that she do this instead, blah, blah, blah. Like, I haven't had those conversations. I've had the conversations with, people who are just like, yeah, no, the government's, it's too soon. I don't know what's in it. The government isn't going to just control my life. And like, I have a harder time, like, relating to that, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, sorry, just real quick, not to cut Jordan off, and then I'll really let him go. One thing that I heard when it came to nurses, I talked to a nurse about why a number of nurses didn't want to get vaccinated. And she immediately said, without hesitating, women were afraid of infertility being a consequence. And I was like, okay, I get that, right? And I can understand that, right? And And going back to conversations I had with Monica when it first came out that we may have to get Jade and the boys and whomever vaccinated at some point. Monica was literally in tears saying that Jade will be homeschooled. She'll figure it out. We'll figure it out. And she started crying. And the only reason was because she didn't want to give Jade something. And then one day Jade couldn't have kids, right? It's a topic. It's a hot spot. I get it, right? It wasn't, there's a chip in my arm. There's
Right.
any government control. It's a legitimate, hey, it's just a little bit too soon. And that's the kind of thing that I can roll with. And I think that's what, Richard's saying is that when it's
Exactly,
that,
right.
okay, that's fine. But when they're putting microchips, it's like, okay, calm down.
I mean, I won't lie. Go ahead, Jordan, please, and then I'll tell mine. Yeah.
Don't be sorry.
No, yeah, don't be, because I got to learn how to not to. But no, I spent a decent amount of time this afternoon Googling Joe Rogan, Jenny McCarthy, because I really wanted to come to the table with this like stand up, like, oh, look at this, because Jenny McCarthy was the first anti-vaxxer. She blew that up. Like, her son is autistic. She went on a rant for years, on The View, everything. She very much feels like she got canceled and lost work because she was anti-vaccination, because she thought her son was autistic because of that. And, and I was like, and people destroyed her for that. Like, destroyed her. She was a joke. She's a moron. Shut your mouth. And I was like, I bet you there's Joe Rogan doing a stand-up bit going, yeah, I want to get my medical news from Jenny McCarthy. I think that's a good Joe Rogan. Yeah, like, and again, I feel really confident that if I look at someone's Facebook post today, or, who was like, you can't tell me what to put in my body, I'm not getting the vaccination. Like, if I go back in time 12 years ago, that same person might be saying, shut up, Jenny, just get vaccinations. You need to get vaccinated.
Yeah.
So it's that kind of idea, like, but to your example, like, your kids have all their other shots, like, but there's a new wrinkle. And like, that's the thing, and you don't have to make that decision tomorrow. You can see what, you're lucky in that respect. But yeah, that's the kind of thing. That's where, like, if you said to me, hey, yeah, I'm worried about this aspect of it, like, that's an interesting point. But that's it. I'm done talking. Thank you.
Yeah, congrats. I haven't had any issues.
I was gonna say, ignore me.
They literally did, and that's what happened.
It's not a contest. So yeah. Yep. Right. It is. It is one. Yeah. It is something I'm genuinely embarrassed. Go ahead. Sorry.
He said you're good.
Right. Yeah. I mean, like Gilbert Gottfried lost. Sorry, sounds funny. Gilbert Gottfried lost. He was the Affleck duck, and it was a nice paycheck. But he made a joke about the tsunami, several years ago now, and he thought he had a funny joke, and because it used to be a really like uh, badge of honor, I think, for comedians and even for like certain people, like nothing's off limits. I'll make fun of anything, and what Twitter did was say, "Oh no. Here's the thing: you used to tell that joke to 100 people in a nightclub. Now you're telling 80,000 people, and we're going to tell you because we can hit reply on our keyboard, and so yeah, like he lost, and again, there's been several comedians like that, and that's why they all have that thing. But to Jordan's point, like one of the most embarrassing things for me within the last few years was that Watchmen and Lovecraft Country. First off, also embarrassing that they don't have multiple seasons of both those shows. Just
Yeah.
amazing shows. If you haven't watched Lovecraft Country and Watchmen, the HBO show, check them out now. But to learn about the Tulsa riots, like, and it's not even the word for them, the Tulsa Massacre. Sorry, the Tulsa Massacre. Like, this is something that should be taught in school. Like, like not in any way. Please, everyone who might be listening, not in any way taking away from September 11th or from other major things that we commemorate. Like, no, we had a full blown section of a town that was black owned and black run, like Black Wall Street, destroyed, by hateful and, and it took 2 comic book shows to make them into like awareness, and to have something like Juneteenth become a holiday. It's crazy. And I know George Floyd, I think all of the, the attention that was brought, also helped Juneteenth, but it's just like how how do I get through 46, 7 years of life and not know about like, and again, what's really scary is there's probably other insane, like horrible things out there that I don't know about, because I spent my life following these guys around. And they would teach me a few things and they are, open-minded, but, yeah. Did either of you see the graphic novel Mouse? Have you heard about this? Yeah. So, right. So Mouse is, and as a sixth grade librarian, so Mouse, there's two books to it. And the author and the writer, his father told him all about his experiences in the Holocaust. And he did a graphic novel, but instead of having humans, he put mice as the people going through the Holocaust. So he just drew mice. And in some ways, it makes it a little easier to digest for younger students, and it really is an amazing read. It is heartbreaking. The only time there's humans in it is when he's showing like the biographical issues where him and his dad are talking and his dad's telling him, about things in current time. But it is just an amazing novel. And, it became news last week because the Tennessee Board of Education wanted it banned from their curriculum in their schools. Like they didn't want it necessarily taken out of the library or like banned, but they wanted it not taught. And it's just this like, why do I feel like, I was going to say, correct me if I'm wrong, but you guys can't. Like, why do I feel like those same people who were calling for that book to be banned are also the same people going, you're canceling my favorite actor, like, don't you dare cancel cultures. I don't know why I'm doing a Southern accent. Cancel culture is, but it's just
we know where his head's at with who cancels culture. Right.
But that's the thing. Like, all right. Yeah. When you try to cancel, like, how dare you tell Gina Carano she can't speak her mind? Oh yeah. No, you can't have that book, because there's naked mice in it. Like, okay. Yeah. Here's the thing. It's not naked mice. It's, because they're in, they're naked because it's depicting the Holocaust where they were stripped of their clothes, and it's, horrific, and and it's important that people know about this, but that's, and again, there's probably absolutely, they don't get it. Like the people don't get it. Like, yeah, how dare you tell Gina Carano she can't talk? Also, yeah, ban that book. Don't ban her. Like that's a little bit where I struggle with this, because, it's a lot of what's good for the goose is not, necessarily good for the gander. And I don't remember which one's the gander and which one's the goose.
Yeah, no, I completely get what you're saying. Not to start this podcast over again. And I actually had this discussion with somebody a couple months ago, a year ago, maybe a year and a half ago now. And we got to talking about the curriculum in high school and junior high and things like that. And I basically was saying, I'm not in any way, shape, or form opposed to, this is where we get canceled, people or the education system deciding like, okay, that's not really what happened after years of research. We've done more research. This is what did happen, right? And it's kind of like rewriting history in a sense. Not that they're saying what's wrong, but it's different than what we all learned in elementary and high school and everything like that, right? And I do believe that there is room for education reform in that sense. And I know that the person who I was discussing this with didn't really agree, right? Because in a sense, it's kind of like we're set in our ways. But I am actually, I'm curious to see how things unfold for Jade and James and Axe, because they'll be right there, right? They're little ones right now. By the time they get to middle school, high school, everything's going to be completely different, if not rewritten, if not facts added or taken away, or things like that. I'm a little bit scared, right? Because I don't want, everyone getting crazy in the classroom. I don't want the school board meetings having fights and things like that. But it is something that I think about. And no, I am not into the business of trying to ban because I'm sure, like Richard was saying, the kids interpret, and we've talked about this before, Richard and I, the kids interpret comic books differently, right? This is how you're teaching me something. This is how I'm learning. Richard has made comments on our first podcast we did together where, like, what was it, Richard? The teachers have a problem with kids using comic books for projects, right?
Sure, right.
You were trying to explain, like, but this is how they're taking it in. This is a way for them to make it sink in and stick. So there's room for a change in that regard, if I do say so myself.
No, we definitely have stumbled on. Yeah. I canceled my Netflix a couple months ago. Sorry, but go on. Yeah, Shem, please, thank you.
Right. Listen, I think that's a great place to wrap it up. Not just because we went over our 30-minute
Because I was genuinely going to take us for another 20 minutes. So that's fine.
But this is one of the reasons that, Jordan, we love having you on the show, and I think that you made a great point. And I think that the one sentence that you made was that it kind of ties everything together. Is that we're inherently flawed, right? We're a young race in the grand scheme of things. Not to get too flat earthy, scientific-y, right?
Yeah.
But
I was gonna say, ever since you shaved, you've gotten just a little too out there.
Little too. But you always do come on. You always make great points, and I think you just did right there. That was like a great closing sentence about how they were a product of their time, and people are inherently flawed, and we're all learning. Cancel culture will continue to do their thing. Joe Rogan and Dave Chappelle will wake up tomorrow morning and look to the next project without anything in their way. It is a very interesting time, right? Like we said at the beginning of this show, January was a long year, but we all made it. It is literally January 31st at the recording of this episode, and we're looking forward to talking about a few more things. Joe Rogan, he's in a little bit of a hot water right now, but we'll see what happens. I'm sure he'll get out of it. Maybe The Rock will pull him out of it. We're not quite sure yet. But interesting times. Joe Rogan, Dave Chappelle, Netflix, Spotify, they will march on and rise again tomorrow. But we'll see what happens, I think, also. It's going to be pretty interesting. But, Jordan, thank you so much for joining us. We'll always have you back. You give a lot of great insight, a lot of knowledge, and we're always happy to have you, man. Richard, thanks for being the only one here with the beard. We need to keep the balance.
Yes. Thank you. I'll keep it up.
It's coming back. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for listening and watching.
guys.
Jordan, thanks for joining us. Richard, thank you, man. We'll see everybody next